Hey guys, I'm Lee Morris. This is my buddy Nick Milak. As you can tell, he has a glorious beard. We're going to be doing a photo shoot today with Nick because ACDsee is sponsoring this video. Later on, we're going to be using their Photo Professional 2019 software to edit this photo. But let's go ahead and build up the lighting and see what we can come up with. All right, so I've got Nick sitting down here. He's got this epic coat. And I'm gonna start off lighting with a beauty dish. And we'll just work through this as I take pictures, and I'll kind of tell you about my thought process as I'm seeing each shot. So we're gonna be using Profoto B10s here. I love these just because they're so small. And keep in mind, guys, we do have video lights going right now, but we're gonna be using strobes. So the lighting when I take pictures is gonna look completely different than what it looks like to you guys. So something to keep in mind with beauty dishes is the light comes out of the flash head, hits the back of this plate, and then fills up the dish. I want to place him in the shadow of this reflector plate here. If I turn this too far to the side and he can actually see this flash tube inside, he'll be getting direct harsh light from the flash tube itself. There's some cool things that you can do with that as well, but we're not gonna be doing that today. I really wanna light him with the reflection outside of this bowl or this dish here. All right, so I'm gonna create some like Rembrandt style lighting where I just wanna have a little highlight on his opposite cheek. I also want it low enough that I can see a little bit of detail in his eyes. Sometimes I have a tendency, especially with guys, to go up higher, but in this case, I want to have just a little bit of detail in his eyes. Let's take a test shot here. All right, as you can see, we've got decent lighting on him, but it's obviously a little bit dark on the opposite side of his face. But the other issue that we're having is you can see that we have this line on our background. We have so much light spilling out of the edge of our dish, and it's actually throwing more light on the background than it is on Nick himself. So to fix that, what we're going to use is a grid. So by throwing this in front of the dish, we're going to throw all of the light forward. Nothing's going to be spilling out of the sides. Now, I know the grid tends to take up about 2 stops of light, so I'm raising this flash by 2 stops. Let's take another test shot. All right, so we have killed that spill that we have on the background. I think that looks great, but also there's a huge problem with the shadow side of Nick's face. It's just too dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one other light to this shot. Now, if you guys can remember from older videos that I've done where I've taken portraits, I do not like lighting people from 2 different directions. I call it like 45 degree lighting. I hate that. What I'm going to do is spin this around. I'm going to use the fill light coming kind of from the same side as our key, but a little bit more towards the camera. I may put it just slightly over the camera. That's going to add a little bit of fill to the dark side of Nick's face without killing the vibe that we're trying to create here. So at this point, I feel like our lighting is in a generally good position, but I'd really like to cut off these video lights, turn on the modeling lights on these lights so I can really see what I'm doing. Let's fine tune our lighting and then really work with Nick's face position and facial expression and get this final shot. All right, I got tons of different shots, different angles, some where Nick's looking at the camera, some where he's looking away into the light. I think we have lots of different options. Let's head to the computer and pick out our favorite. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video is sponsored by ACDsee Photo Studio Professional. And this is pretty impressive raw processing software. If you're accustomed to using Adobe Lightroom, maybe you're tired of spending the monthly fee every single month, you can get this software right now for just a flat 60 bucks, and it seems to be able to do everything Lightroom can do, plus a lot more. If you're trying to replace Photoshop as well, check out the Ultimate Edition, and you can work with layers just like you do in Photoshop. That's pretty impressive too, but today we're just gonna be working in the professional version that doesn't have that feature. Now, the first thing that I need to do is cull all of the images that I took on this shoot, and right now I'm in the Manage setting up here. I can click on the photos, view, develop, or edit. We're gonna go through some of these modules in a little bit, but right now I just wanna cull through each one of these images and find my favorites. Up here under View, I can click Film Strip, and then I can go right and left with these arrow keys, and we can go through each one of these images. And then by giving them a number 1 through 5, I can give them a star rating, and that's gonna help us cull everything down. Now, you will notice if you're accustomed to Lightroom that each one of these 50 megapixel raw images is loading incredibly fast. And I have found that this software is faster than Lightroom for us. One annoyance with Adobe Lightroom is that you have to import all of your files, and each time you open up the software, it's slowly bringing each of the raw files in. This software looks directly at folders on your hard drive and reads those raw files instantly, so you're not having to import at the beginning of each session. So I'm gonna go through each one of these images right now, and I'm going to rate them a 1 or a 0, and I will be right back with you soon. All right, I've just gone through all of the images. I've rated the ones that I think are the best a 1. Everything else I left as unrated or 0. And I can right click down here and filter by, and I'm just gonna click all rated. This is going to show me only my favorite shots that I just gave a 1-star rating. Now I'm going to go through again, and I'm going to give these a higher score. All right, so I've culled this down to my 5 favorite shots. If we click up here in the Develop module, you'll see that all of the sliders that you're probably accustomed to seeing on the right-hand side of the screen are on the left over here. If we expand the General tab here, we can change all of the standard sliders, exposure, highlights, fill, contrast, all that sort of thing. Now this shot is a little dark, and I like it dark. But let's push it up just a little bit. I'm going to recover some of these highlights that we're kind of losing in his forehead because it's getting a little bright as I push this. And I don't want to go too far with this because it's going to kill the mood that we were trying to create here. Now we were shooting with a 50 megapixel image, and there is just insane detail in these files. If I'm going to be moving something like the clarity slider, I will definitely want to be zoomed in so that I can see what it's doing. We can move down to the white balance tab, and I feel like our white balance is pretty good. Maybe I'll cool it off just a little bit. Now, if we drop down to tone curve down here, this is where we can start adding a little bit of contrast to the image. And of course, we can also go into channels and just mess with individual colors if we want to. I think though, instead of doing this, let me show you guys the split tone panel down here. If we push these up a lot, we'll first just do the highlights. I can choose a tone by moving this highlight hue slider. And let's say we want to add some orange in the highlights. And then I can push the shadows, and let's add some blues or some teals in the shadows. Then what we can do is we can push this balance slider to determine how much we want of each color. And obviously this is way too crazy, so we can start toning down these colors here and just give a hint of this color tone. Now, if we like the way this looks, I can right click on this image, copy settings, and I can select all, okay, and then I can right click on the next image and paste. And as you can see, we have the exact same effects on this image. Now, if I want to toggle on and off any one of these things that I've done, I can click this little button right here next to split tone. I don't feel like it's really working for this image, so I can turn that off. But any other slider settings, for instance, under general that we've done, will be saved here. Of course, I can go in and fine tune it. For this shot, let's do like a desaturated look. Now, let's say we wanted to brighten up just his eyes. They do have masks here. If I click on this develop brush, you can see I have this brush that's far too large over here, and using these sliders on the left, I can get the exact right size that I need. And I'm gonna zoom in a lot. So at this point, I've made a mask right where I want to brighten the image, and then I can push the exposure. So first I'm going to click off of show brush strokes, and you can see I can push the exposure and really brighten his eyes. That is way too much, but just a little bit is what we want. And let's zoom out to see what it looks like. That's way too much. You can see we can darken them as well. Now, the other thing that I'm noticing, you'll see that there's blue in the highlight in his eyes. I feel like that looks a little strange. So I'm going to push the temperature just on his eyes as well. And you can see I'm just cutting that blue out of his eyes and getting a more white reflection. I think that looks a lot better. All right, for this next shot here, let's say you wanted to do some skin retouching. Up here in the upper left, we can click on repair. And if I zoom in a little bit, not quite that far, we can zoom around and see what we want to edit here. Now, this heel brush is very easy to use. You simply right click where there's clean skin and then left click where there's a blemish, and it will automatically fix the skin. So I'm gonna go through real quick and touch up some of these blemishes. Now, if you ever wanna see what the original looked like, right down here, you can click show original, and you can see what it looks like with and without your edits. I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go back to the tune module over here, and let's zoom back out. I'm just gonna recover a few of the highlights that are blowing on his forehead, just a little bit. Now, everything that we've been doing so far is a non-destructive edit, but if you want to go further, you can click on the edit module in the upper right-hand corner, and this gives us a lot more options. Keep in mind that from this point on, anything that we do will be creating a separate TIFF file or a JPEG. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to click on dodge and burn down here. And let's dodge this image a little bit. Once again, I'm going to brighten up his eyes just a little bit. So I'm just painting right on his eye right now, brightening it up just a little bit. You don't want to go too far with this. And I'll hit the other eye as well. And you can click show previous to see what you've done. As you can see, we've just lightened things up a little bit. Let's go back, make sure we haven't gone too far. I think that looks good. And I'm going to click done down here. And let's make this one black and white. I'm going to click on convert to black and white. And as you can see, we have all of these individual sliders for each one of the colors, and we can affect how that color is converted into black and white individually. This is why it's really important to shoot color even if you want it to be black and white. It just gives you a ton of options when you get back into post. I feel like that's a pretty good looking black and white conversion. I can click over here on the contrast tab, and once again, we can just go crazy with this. I think that's good. I'm going to click done. Now for this shot, I'm going to go back to develop. Quickly, we'll do skin retouching. All right, now that I have his skin retouched a little bit, let's push the exposure just a bit and then recover some of those highlights in his forehead. that looks good. And then I'm going to go back over to the edit panel. All right, so I'm going to go down to color LUTs, and let's add a LUT to this. All right, I like the elegance LUT. I'm going to click done. That's going to add it to our image. And then I'm going to click on tone curves and go into the red channel and just push and pull this a little bit. Check out the green channel. And the blue channel. And we'll hit done. So you can see before and after here. I think that's a nice edit. All right, for this final shot here, I'm going to go back over to the develop module. Let's give this just a nice blue look. I'm going to click on white balance here. We'll push the white balance over a bit. I don't want to go too far with it because I don't want to mess up his skin tones too much. I'd prefer there to be more blue in the shadows. We're going to go back over to the split tone, and I'm going to push up the shadows and pick a nice blue. And then what I can do is drag this balance slider over until it's not affecting his face. So it's just going to be affecting the shadows themselves. I feel like that's looking good. All right, let's go to effects, photo effects, and then we can cycle through these and find one that we like. I don't want to go too far with this. So as you can tell, a lot of these effects look crazy, but if you click on this little arrow, you can turn the opacity down a bunch. We can see this is what it looked like before the effect. We could add just a hint of this. I think that looks pretty cool. Now, let's say we wanted to crop an image. I can click up here on geometry, and it'll bring up these grids, and you can see we can go ahead and crop this however we want. On the left side, we can click on constrain proportions if we want to have a little bit more control over the aspect ratio. I feel like that looks pretty cool. Now, I feel like his hand is a little bit too bright. So I'm going to click on the paintbrush. I am going to set the size of my paintbrush here, and I'm just gonna paint where I feel like it's a little bright on his hand. And then I can lower, first I'm going to turn off show brush strokes, and I'm just gonna lower the exposure just on his hand. I feel like this part of his finger is still a little bright, so I can just click up there. But I think that looks good. My eye doesn't go right to his hand anymore. Now, once again, I feel like we could brighten up his eyes just a little bit. And to create a new mask, I'm just going to click down here on this second brush. And I'm just gonna paint in his eyes just a little bit. Once again, I'm going to click show brush strokes. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm just gonna boost this a little bit. Don't want to go too far with it. We can go back out to see the entire shot, and then we can affect just his eyes here. And once again, I feel like he needs a little bit of skin retouching. We can easily do that by clicking on repair. And let's knock that out. All right, guys, that wraps up this edit. As you can see, I did 5 images really quickly. For some of these, I probably went too far, but I wanted to show you how some of these tools work and where you can find some of the tools that you're probably gonna be looking for if you're coming over from Lightroom. Believe it or not, it may actually be faster at culling raw files than Adobe Lightroom. And if you're tired of paying for those Adobe Creative Cloud payments every single month, you can go out and buy this software for just a flat 60 bucks. You can't beat that. For more info just like this, head over to fstoppers.com. And if you'd like to check out our full-length photography tutorials, head over to fstoppers.com/store. And if you'd like to check out ACDsee's Photo Studio, check out the link below.